Okay, Mr. Ramirez. So just going to visit with you a little bit about the lesson that I got to observe this morning whenever I walked in, just a short 10-minute walkthrough. So I didn't get to view the first part of it or the last part of it, but just wanted to go over a few things that I did see. So the first thing that I took a look at whenever I walked into your room was I noticed that you had your we will and I will statements both. And so your we will statement tied back to the TEAC. And
Yes.
then you're starting a new program, the PhD science. And
That's-
so did the lesson come directly from,
It came directly from,
Okay,
yes, ma'am.
so-
I'm just kind of, it's scripted.
it's scripted. So it was aligned with what the TEAC, which was identifying what can be learned from going through a canyon.
Exactly,
Okay.
landforms.
Okay. So whenever I walked in, you had your Promethean panel, and students were looking at some pictures and you were asking them and pulling popsicle sticks. So I thought that was really good because a lot of students will be the only ones that will answer every single
Mhm.
time, or just out of habit, you're going to go to whoever has their hand up the first, at first. So I like that you were randomly calling students. And so everybody was actively listening and watching the entire time because they knew that there was a chance that they would be called on. So, but I liked that every student that answered your question noticed something different.
That's true.
And so you were asking students, you had pictures, and that you were asking them what's something that you notice. And so they had different responses. One of them had said something about, well, they use paddles and not a motor. And you're like, I hadn't even thought about that. So, but you asked follow-up questions if needed. Can you explain why you felt like you might need to, on some students you were asking follow-up questions, others you didn't?
The reason that I've already gone through the entire unit, so I already know where this lesson is going.
Okay,
I know what the question, the next phase of it is, we'll be putting the things that we noticed up on the board.
okay,
And so there's some things so that when we go through our module, so that I have that information, I have to have it now. I needed to hear some
Okay.
different words. I had to hear there are layers. I had to hear the rock layers are different colors. There's certain things that I have to hear because tomorrow, what we were discussing, what they wrote in their booklets, we're going to start off with like a parking lot type thing
okay.
where they're going to write one of their questions or two of their questions.
Mhm.
And so then from there, we will get our, it's not a phenomenon question, it's a focus question.
Okay,
So we're set up with 6 focus questions, but if they don't have, and what we'll do is their idea, the concepts that they've seen, what they noticed will go inside these questions. So if there is anything to go with one of the focus questions,
then they're not.
then I'm not going to cover it in my
Gonna be-
module, and I have to cover
Yeah.
it. So basically, that's what I was doing. I would think, okay, that one's close. That one's close to the question. Oh, let me just throw. I don't know it all that well, but something. What living things live in a? What would support life in a canyon? If that's one of my modules, then I need to get something related to water,
Right.
air, shelter. And that's what I was trying to do. I was
Okay.
trying to get them.
Steer them toward that. Okay,
There's
that's
the
what you're
word I
saying.
was
Okay.
looking for. Very
Okay,
good.
yeah, that made sense. And I liked how after the activity of you asking, you went through several students, tell me what you noticed, tell me what you noticed. Then you played a video and it talked about the importance of making observations, telling what you noticed, and then what are you wondering? And so they were able to connect what they just did to the next part. So
Exactly.
there was cohesion there, and it
Truly.
all connected really well, I thought. So there was evidence of you having students analyze and think, and then they were able to, through listening, they were making sure they weren't repeating things as well. So they were kind of building off of what someone else said before them as well. And then you gave them instructions to going into their workbook, and asked them to, let me see, it was to tell, or was it to record
Things that
they noticed or observed.
Mhm.
But then you made it a point, as you were going around and you were monitoring students, make sure you write in complete sentences. And so I immediately saw that whenever you said that, a few people started erasing real quick and went back, because they figured out, you know, your expectation is that this, you know, we need to have complete sentences, and just putting a one-word response is not going to be enough.
Acceptable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's clear that, you know, although you didn't have to utilize, you know, go over everything as far as what classroom procedures look like, it's evident that you have those in place, and, you know, just a quick reminder gets everybody back on track, more or less. So you spent some time in the power zone. You were in the middle talking about pictures, making observations and everything, and then you moved on to, whenever it was independent work, you were actively monitoring all of the students. You didn't just go around and sit at the desk, and which keeps everyone engaged and from being off task. So the majority of the students, whenever I was walking around as well, I think out of the 21 students, I think about 17 of them were on task completely, and I think 3 were just waiting for you to walk by to get a little bit of reassurance. So you can tell who just needs, they know what to do. I could tell they were just unsure of, am I going to be okay or not? So I thought that was interesting. Let me see here. Maybe a few more notes in a second. I had a couple of questions for you, just to kind of see where your thinking was. So what are some of the things that you thought went well in the lesson?
The students were engaged. I think at this point, we still have the novelty of the name thing. And so hopefully I can ride that wave for a while, because once you get into the old rut, then they start getting off task. They start not focusing. And so that's one of the things that I think are on my side right now. Another good thing is the students we do have, throughout the grade level, we have good discipline. And so students know what they should and shouldn't do. And they, for the most part, in the classroom, do what they're supposed to do, what we're expecting them to do, which can help them stay successful. The program, I like the program. I like the way that they've set it up. I noticed that there's a lot of interaction between me and the kids, but mainly the ones working hardest are the kids. And before we started this program, that's not the way it was. I was the one that was distributing the information, making sure, doing the majority of the work, and they were just kind of giving me just a little bit. So I went home tired, and they didn't.
And that was one of the things that I noticed. In those 10 minutes, I saw a lot of questioning, and it was, their wheels were constantly turning. So with every question, not with every single question, but with a lot of your questions, you offered another follow-up question. So it wasn't a one and done thing. I'm going to answer this question, then I'm off the hook. And then some of the kids, even though you didn't pull their popsicle stick, they wanted to offer more. And so that was good.
I try to make sure that whenever the students ask, I'll try to throw it out to everyone. Does anybody else have an idea? Because you're right. Some of them want to participate. They're not lucky.
They're popsicle stick. So what were some of the decisions as you were going through that portion of the lesson that you had to make on, and adjust according to, it might not have been, since we're piloting PhD science, it might not have been following the script, but you made that quick adjustment? What were some of the things that, based on what you were seeing in the classroom, you felt like you needed to adjust?
Definitely the follow-up questions.
Okay.
Those, actually, it's not really a script type thing. It just says, this is what you want, this is what you want to know. This is how you're gonna ask for it, and this is what you want to know.
Okay,
And so from there, I have the leeway to
Okay.
take it however, verbally or any way that I need to do it. I had a hard time getting them to share adventures. And so what I ended up doing was I would tell one of my adventures.
uh-huh.
And so something that happened to me as a child, and I went through that, and that usually would open the floodgates for me, because
They can connect with that.
it happened well with all my classes, and it
Wow.
worked. If that wouldn't have worked, then my third group, it didn't really help all that much. So what I ended up doing was I started giving ideas. Did you ever go on a carnival ride you've never been on? Have you ever gone to some place you've never been before, gone on a trip? And then sooner or later, I finally had one kid pick her hand up. And it wasn't the best story in the world. Went to the beach and saw a
Mhm.
fish, but that got everybody else going, saying, well, yeah, I've been to the beach and this is what we did. And then it really opened it up. It really opened.
So were
it up.
they able to eventually tie that into the,
They,
roundabout way?
actually, the way we started it was, we were talking about adventures at the beginning, because we're following, Major Powell's, trip along the Grand Canyon.
okay,
And so the way that we introduced it is, that was an adventure he went on. He
Oh,
didn't call
okay.
it the Grand Canyon, because that was in the
before
1870s.
it had a name.
And nobody had
Yeah.
a name. So it was called The Great Unknown. And so it talks about things that happened on this trip. And so that's how we introduced it. That was the hook. The
Okay,
hook to,
interesting,
it's an adventure.
interesting. Well, that's neat. So did the students learn what you intended for them to learn?
Yes, from the exit
Okay.
tickets I've seen so far, I haven't looked at the last one, but yes. Well, actually, my last group hasn't gotten to the exit ticket because we didn't get through the whole lesson,
Okay,
but from what I've looked at so far, they have a basic idea of what we wanted to know. What can you learn when you go into an unknown canyon?
okay. What did the students' work samples? So whenever I finished up my walkthrough, they were finishing up or working on their independent part. So what did their work samples reflect? But more or less, did it show what level or what degree did it show they were engaged in
Well,
understanding?
I had,
the
it
concept.
looked, I believe they were at least in the high 90s, because everything that they wrote was relevant to the question.
Good.
What did you notice? They told me, I noticed this.
Mhm.
One thing that it was a change I had to make for group 3, was whenever I put up the 3 pictures of the 3 areas of the Grand Canyon. And so in the answer document, they had picture 1, picture 2, picture 3, and they were supposed to look at the first one and then write what they noticed and what they
Mhm.
questioned, then the second one. And what I noticed was some of them didn't do it, especially my first group.
Right.
Some of them, they were just looking at all of them and just writing, filling everything in. So the second time I clarified, okay, this is picture 1, picture 2, and then I went ahead and got my camera out and showed this is picture 1, 2, 3. And on the last one, in my last group, which is a struggling group, I just put up the one picture. Here's picture
So they
1. This goes on your first line. Picture 2, put that in the middle line. And that way, that was just something I had to do.
So
Because
I wonder what would happen, especially, you have a group that has more struggling students in it, giving them the opportunity to turn and talk to a neighbor about, like, are you seeing the same thing I am? Or I wonder if that would.
that probably would have been very effective.
Interesting. Okay. So you provided for the visual learners, they had that opportunity to visualize kinesthetic part of it. Is there any part of the, I guess, learning style that you think lacked and maybe?
Today, I would say that, yeah, the verbal, definitely, auditory was definitely covered. Visual was definitely covered. The tactile, we didn't.
Okay.
But that is come because there are, not interactive, but there are hands-on activities that are tied to
That
it.
will come.
It's just, yes,
Okay.
it's just, we're not there yet. We're just trying to expose them and get them thinking
Okay.
in the correct way.
So you talked a little bit about every group, you kind of made adjustments based on how the previous class did. So that was really my last question, but overall, I thought students were engaged. You didn't have to redirect anybody to get them back, into the focus of what the lesson was. And, they seem to enjoy,
I think they do.
and I think the pictures, it was something different than I think that they were expecting. So,
Yeah.
at first I had to really look at your "we will, I will" statement, and then I looked at the pictures, and I had to think for a minute because I just came in during that, little snippet, like,
Mm.
what does that have to do with this? And so as I was hearing the kids respond, I thought that that was interesting. Some of them noted, how spaced out the rocks were, and, they noticed the steep sides and things like that. So all of those things started helping me put it together. So the observations they made helped me, connect it all as well. So I thought it did a really good job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
All
it.
right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.